Barbarian's Georgina Campbell did not deserve this. Welcome back to another Sugarandfrights movie review. Today we'll be talking about Psycho Killer. Let it be on the record that I didn't have high hopes for this movie to begin with. I say it all the time, but I will say it again. I do not find Satanism scary. It is consistently corny and just too hard to take seriously. For me, it really just feels Hot Topic circa 2010. And don't get me wrong, I was a Hot Topic girly. But I'd like to think that I am older and wiser now, and this topic just never works for me in a horror movie. So getting that out of the way, I didn't think it would be good. But I also didn't think that this would be unintentionally maybe one of the funniest movies I watched this year. So this one was directed by Gavin Pallone. It was written by Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven. And that's a movie I haven't seen in a long time, but I do remember it being very good and very well written, so I don't know what happened between then and now, but yikes. This one stars Georgina Campbell, James Preston Rogers, with a cameo from Malcolm McDowell, of all people, who just seems to pop up wherever he damn feels like. A police officer tracks a killer after her husband, a highway patrolman, becomes one of his victims. I feel like the Mad Lib they pulled out of a desk drawer for this movie was like 90s satanic panic cat and mouse thriller, and it really hits all of the points for all of these different genres, but not particularly well. So on to flavor, where we talk about the themes of the movie. I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that this movie was really saying anything. So obviously this movie is about Satanism and satanic panic. The killer in this movie is, and I shit you not, named the Satanic Slasher, which is such a goofy name in itself, but I can't help but think about the hash slinging slasher from SpongeBob anytime I heard it. And I promise you that every single person in this movie says the name of the killer so seriously, with no hint of humor to it. It is very, very serious. And also, just a side note, I feel like that 20-minute episode of SpongeBob holds much more tension than this entire movie. We also get some very heavy-handed themes of love and grief and revenge with Georgina Campbell's character, who's obviously hunting the satanic slasher in order to get revenge for her husband. So talking about execution, this is how well the ingredients come together to make a cohesive whole. So this is a very boilerplate film. It is competently made, competently acted. It has a distinct beginning, middle, and end. So that does have that going for it. And despite the absolute train wreck that she found herself in, Georgina Campbell does do a good job with what she has to work with. So if you recall in the beginning, I said that this movie might be unintentionally the funniest movie I see this year. And that's mostly because it attempts to be very serious while delivering some of the goofiest plot points I have ever seen in a movie. Like at one point, Georgina Campbell's character pulls out a bunch of LPs for some random metal band as evidence of the satanic slasher's connection to these murders. So transitioning into Frights, where we talk about the visual horror, the tension, and the gore in a horror movie. In my opinion, if we're gonna use terms like psycho killer and satanic slasher, can we at least make some of the kills interesting? For all of the talk that everybody does on various radio shows, the police, what have you, the kills in this movie are very boring, and most of them happen off screen or like out of the view of us in the audience. They're also just kind of uninspired and mostly bloodless. Like it's a lot of just like using a big hammer or an axe. There's also several scenes where the blood splatter is clearly CGI, which can be permissible. I don't think we always have to have practical effects. I know it's more time consuming and potentially more expensive, but with a movie that has pretty much nothing else going for it, I at least want some more interesting, intriguing, and heartfelt gore. Like I need something, you guys. And so like I said, he uses pretty much the same method for all the killings, but the big thing is that he writes satanic stuff all over the walls, which, shrug, I mean, it's nothing none of the stuff that's written on the walls is things we haven't seen before. It's a lot of like that little 666 circle and like pentagrams and stuff, just, you know, uninspired again. Come on, let's, I don't know, like, if we're gonna do it, if we're gonna rehash this cliche over and over and over and over again, can we at least like add some new stuff? I'm sure there are some willfully overlooked satanic symbols that we could have added to this, or I don't know, some different phrases or something. So that is everything that I'll talk about before we get into spoilers. If you're new here, I do this just so that people who don't want to be spoiled can watch the first half of the video, get a sense of the movie, and maybe see if they would want to see it themselves. But then I give you all a clear warning when we're going to go into spoilers. So if you don't care about spoilers, or if you've already seen the movie and just kind of want to have another little discussion with me about it, if you are ending the video here, please like, drop a comment, subscribe to my channel. You can also find me doing short form content on TikTok and Instagram. Welcome to spoilers for all of you who have stuck around. So as we've established, there's not a lot going on in the story that hasn't been done 100 times over. It's very to the point, right? We have a satanic killer who kills someone close to a detective or something. In this case, it's Georgina Campbell's husband, and she is like a highway patrol person in Kansas. And so the movie follows her half of the time and follows him half the time as they sort of like cross the country. He kills people, she gets there too late, and everyone else is inept and doesn't know how to do their job. It's cliche as you would think. You know, she's sort of portrayed as this like tough, no nonsense cop. Her dad is a cop. She's like comes from a long line of law enforcement or whatever. And, you know, she somehow is able to like take a bunch of time off of work with her gun and her badge and like do this side project that she is personally connected to. So as we follow Georgina Campbell on her cross-country road trip, she continues listening to these radio stations, and I believe everyone in this universe is under this shared delusion that the satanic slasher is a scary name for a serial killer. So the information we get on him as we sort of follow him for half of this story is that, number one, he has a laughably low voice. This voice genuinely sounds like one of those like plastic like prank voice changer toys. Like, it is so comically low that it's really hard to take it seriously. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it's really hard to take it seriously, because I can't, you can't take any of this stuff seriously. He's also got like the satanic sticker pack like sleeve with just everything that you would imagine would come in like a Halloween costume, like tattoo sleeve for a Satanist TM. We learned that he takes a boatload of pharmaceuticals for different purposes, like he just eats them and that's fine. One of my favorite facts that we learn about Mr. Satanic Slasher is that he broke into a library and stole the encyclopedias for N and T. So remember that, because it does come up later. And it is explained that he steals the encyclopedias because the FBI agent that helps Georgina Campbell's character says, and I quote, "If the FBI knows anything, it's the internet. And trust me, he's not on there. Thank you." So a series of super boring kills ensue. There's like a baby bomb dropped at one point, meaning that Georgina Campbell's character is pregnant. And then they get this bug up their butt to try to make a joke, potentially, even though if we're watching the same movie, like the whole thing is a joke. But there's a scene where Georgina Campbell's character has What to Expect When You're Expecting and the Satanic Bible on the same table, and it's like, ha ha ha, babies and Satan, I don't know. And this is followed by, again, a very serious research montage where she Googles the words "open the gate" and Satanism. And this is where she ends up on the MySpace page for some random metal band. And then this is like information, I guess. And it happens off screen, but later, like I said, we are shown a scene where she takes the LPs of this band to the police as evidence for something. So girl had time to go down to the local record store and finance this very well-known, I'm sure, metal band's like music career. But anyway, apparently he also stole a bunch of explosives, which is important later. So we spend another 30 minutes, another very long 30 minutes following these two cross-country. The slasher engages in some very rudimentary secret messaging back and forth through the classifieds. And he's doing this to connect with some other true believers, as he call it. So another group of Satanists, I guess. And this is where Malcolm McDowell comes into play. So he ends up, because he's looking for some sort of information. We don't know what it is. He ends up at Malcolm McDowell's mansion where a bunch of people are doing coke and like, you know, banging each other. And so this movie takes itself so seriously. But I think what we're meant to believe here is that there was a distinction between real Satanism and, I guess, fake, like, poser Satanism, because Malcolm McDowell and his little gang of pals are, like, not doing it the right way. And this part was, like, pretty entertaining, I suppose, but it is subsequently ruined by a sequence of kills that could have been very interesting, but became very boring because, again, a lot of the hits, like the direct impact of the weapon on the bodies, happens either off screen or happens in a way like where it's like turned away from us so we don't see it, which is really unfortunate because I feel like this could have been not redeeming because at this point it's off, we're gone. But I think we could have had like a fun scene in the middle of all of this insanity. But alas. And this is really where the CGI blood splatter comes in. It's just so overt and it could have been good, I think. I think done differently, this could have been a fun sequence. There's also a bunch of unnecessary slow motion shots in this whole sequence, which is completely unnecessary. So the slasher then sets fire to the building, which results in the police finally showing up because who knows where they've been this whole time, which is where we get our little moment where Georgina Campbell shows them the LPs, which I guess is enough to convince them to go to like an abandoned church with her because they think that's where he is gonna be to like blow stuff up. At this point in time, I think I sort of gave up on this movie having any sort of reasonable plot resolution. And once I sort of just allowed myself to be part of the ride is when I started to really just cackle at the absurdity of all of this. So it turns out that blowing up the church was a miscalculation on Georgina's part, and actually he is going to a place called 3 Mile Island, which I guess is real, I don't know, but it's where there's a bunch of like nuclear power plants. And so he's gonna blow these things up in order to, I guess, tunnel into the core of the earth, which I guess to find hell or something. And this is why he met up with the Satanist so that he could get the home address of a dude who works at the power plant. And remember, he broke into a library and stole 2 encyclopedias. And those encyclopedias were for N and T. Nuclear power and 3 Mile Island, baby. So you mean to tell me that this man got all of the information he needed to pull off this plot by stealing 2 encyclopedias? Which, if I remember correctly from opening encyclopedias 100 years ago, they just have like a short paragraph, right? It's just to give you just like, it's like a dictionary, but like for stuff. I don't know, goofy. What ensues is a bunch of power plant workers and Georgina Campbell just stating the obvious for the last like 15 minutes of the movie. The slasher takes his shirt off so we can see more of his goofy ass tattoos. There's one sequence in particular where Georgina Campbell asks for a way to get into this control room and everyone scoffs and they're like, there's no way to get into this control room. But then like 10 seconds later, one of the dudes is like, oh, you know what? There actually is another way to get into this control room, and proceeds to take her to a obscenely obvious door that goes up to a room that gives a straight shot. So then she shoots this plexiglass window 100 times, is able to actually shoot our pal, the satanic slasher, which is supposed to be sort of the end of this whole saga, right? So at this point, we feel a sense of relief because the movie is finally over and we have made it through, right? Wrong, because we need 2 fake out scenes with Georgina Campbell's character. One of them happens in a dream, and then the other one happens when she wakes up from the dream. So it's sort of hinted at that, ooh, perhaps the slasher did survive being shot 100 times and is now back to seek revenge on her. But no, this is not correct, because we get another scene that shows the satanic slasher, wearing his mask and all, being carted off to some giant building in the middle of Death Valley. And you might be thinking, what the hell does that mean? Well, if you were paying attention to me or to the movie that maybe you watched, maybe you didn't, there are several little Easter eggs, you might say, where the radio stations are talking about how the government is using serial killers to do stuff, I guess. So there's various radio stations playing throughout this whole movie, and there's one person who keeps talking about some government plot to resurrect murderers and use them as weapons, I guess. And you wouldn't think anything of it because these radio spots are just so goofy and dumb to begin with, but you're telling me that the culmination of this movie is that the satanic slasher is indeed being used by the government to blow up nuclear power plant? That's the subplot that we're gonna end this with? And tease for a sequel to this mess? I gave this movie 1 star. I felt like it was dangerously close to a half star, but I think a half star for me has to be a movie that makes me angry it's so bad. And this one I just couldn't take seriously enough to be angry about it, if I'm being completely honest. I just stopped caring eventually. I had to sort of give up hope and just kind of sit back for this messy and unbelievably silly wild, wild ride. If you have stuck with me to this point, number 1, thank you. I would love to hear your thoughts on Psycho Killer. As always, be sure to like this video, drop a comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already. I also do short form content on TikTok and Instagram, so you can find those tags at the end of this video. Thank you all for supporting my spooky little journey, and I will see you all in the next one.